Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great interview tonight with Dan Rush of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union in the past, talking about his history. So stay tuned for that. We have some fascinating news in this week as well, so stay tuned for our hemp news segment right after we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
First story tonight is from Washington, D.C. The comprehensive marijuana legalization bill known as the MORE Act should have passed by the time this airs. I am recording this on Wednesday, and it's expected to come up for a vote on Friday. The pending action comes after the House Rules Committee, as expected on Wednesday, advanced the measure to the full House. So today, the House has again passed the MORE Act. The previous U.S. House passed the social justice-focused Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement, or MORE, Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement, MORE Act, by a margin of 28 to 164 in December 2020. But the Senate didn't act under the leadership of Mitch McConnell, so the measure had to start over after the new Congress was seated in January of 2021. We expect the bill to pass by a similar margin, even though some members have changed, but it's a little bit different than the last time when it was a lame duck post-election Congress with no electoral consequences. This one is happening at the start of the primary season, meaning lawmakers will be putting their votes on record, which could help win over voters and also provide fodder for attacks by opponents. The vote on the MORE Act also is another push that the House has done its work and comes as everyone waits for Senator and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to introduce his much-touted comprehensive reform bill that's backed by Cory Booker of New Jersey and our own Ron Wyden here in Oregon. So I predict that Chuck Schumer will introduce his bill to legalize marijuana on April 20th, Wednesday, April 20th. Mark your calendars. Legislation unanimously passed by members of the U.S. Senate empowers the U.S. Attorney General to facilitate clinical research trials involving cannabis. The actions represent one of the very few occasions that members of the Senate have ever advanced marijuana-related reform bills, and one of the few times they acted unanimously this year. Senate Bill 253, the Cannabidiol and Marijuana Research Expansion Act, provides the Office of the Attorney General, rather than the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the discretion to license scientists to engage in clinical trials involving the use of cannabis by humans. Under the proposal, the AG is also provided with the ability to authorize increases in the total number of federally approved marijuana cultivators. So far, the House of Representatives has blocked any move to change that. The Attorney General is provided with a 60-day timeline to either affirm or reject applicants for licensure. Under current regulations, the Drug Enforcement Administration is primarily tasked with reviewing and licensing marijuana cultivators, as well as granting Schedule I licenses to scientists wishing to study cannabis in a clinical setting. In 2016, the agency announced that it would expand the pool of federally licensed growers beyond just the University of Mississippi, which has been the sole grower allowed by the federal government for about 60 years. It was initially granted a federal cannabis cultivation license in 1968, 55 years. In May, the agency for the first time ever announced that it had reached agreements with a handful of third-party applicants to allow them to grow cannabis for use in federally approved clinical trials. For 50 years, they wouldn't allow anyone else. For decades, scientists wishing to work with marijuana have complained that it often takes years before their research protocols are approved by the DEA, and the quality of the cannabis provided by the University of Mississippi's cultivation program is of inferior quality, and it's not representative of the products available in state legal markets. And I can attest that that's true. My friend Elvie Masika, who's one of the few patients, 3 patients left who receive medical marijuana, receives bunk cannabis. It's terrible. Next story is a happier one. In New Mexico, select retailers will begin selling marijuana today and confused infusion products to those aged 21 and older today, Friday, April 1st, the first day that adult use sales are legally permitted. State lawmakers last year passed House Bill 2, the Cannabis Regulation Act, which immediately allowed for adults to possess and home cultivate marijuana, which also established a framework and timeline for the commercial production and retail sale of cannabis products. Under the law, adults may legally purchase up to 2 ounces of marijuana or up to 16 grams of cannabis extract from licensed retailers. According to Victor Reyes, the Deputy Director of New Mexico's Cannabis Control Division, the agency has already issued nearly 100 licenses for cannabis producers, manufacturers, and retailers. However, not all of those establishments are anticipated to be open today for business on April 1st. State officials are also taking steps to permit certain Native American tribes to apply for state licensure to engage in cannabis-related activities. A robust above-ground retail marijuana market is necessary to disrupt the unregulated marketplace and to assure that consumers have adequate access to lab-tested, high-quality products at competitive prices. The speed to market in New Mexico is in contrast to delays rollouts in several other states are currently experiencing. For example, adult use sales in New York are not expected to begin until 2023. In Virginia, the timeline for the launch of retail sales is in limbo after lawmakers failed to agree this session on legislation to regulate the adult use market. In New Jersey, lawmakers recently announced the formation of a special legislative committee to investigate why regulators have missed the state's initially scheduled adult use sales launch. A 2019 economic analysis estimated that adult use legalization in New Mexico will create an estimated 11,000 new jobs within 5 years. In South Dakota, Governor Nome has vetoed marijuana expungement legislation after signing legislation to protect limited home cultivation for patients, as well as legislation to protect patients' rights. Governor Nome reversed course and vetoed South Dakota Senate Bill 151 that would have allowed for automatic removal of convictions from a person's background check for marijuana-related offenses. Our last story tonight comes back from Washington, D.C. Federal officials charged fewer people with marijuana-related crimes in 2021 as compared to previous years, according to data compiled by the U.S. Sentencing Commission in its 2021 annual report. Just under 1,000 people were charged federally with violating marijuana laws in 2021. They comprised less than 6% of those charged with violating federal drug laws that year. By contrast, federal officials charged nearly 7,000 people in 2012 with marijuana offenses. That was greater than the number of people charged with any other drug violation. By 2016, that total fell to fewer than 3,500 people. The total has continued to fall steadily since then. Although Congress has failed to amend federal cannabis laws, clearly the attitudes and priorities of federal prosecutors have shifted in the era of state-level marijuana legalization. Now it's time for federal lawmakers to codify these changes in priorities by descheduling marijuana. Overall, 31% of all federal drug offenders in 2021 were charged with drug violations, up from 26% in 2020. Just under half of all people charged with federal drug offenses in 2021 were prosecuted for trafficking methamphetamine. It's a big change from the past when it was marijuana. Well, that's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. If you are a loved one or looking to find a doctor who can help you get a medical marijuana permit wherever you are in this country, give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. We are now going to a fascinating interview with Dan Rush. I think you love it. We hear you have a little video rolling in there. And remember to work and restore him. Good night. I would like to introduce a good friend, Dan Rush, who worked with our initiative here in Oregon to legalize marijuana back in 2012 and helped us link up with the United Food and Commercial Workers Local. He was working with the National United Food and Commercial Workers Union. And there's a new documentary coming out about him, and he's got a book out. And we'll be talking more about that. Now you're working with the Labor Management Resources group. And let's talk about that. First of all, tell us about what you're doing now, Dan.
Hey, Paul, it's great to see you, and thank you for having me on. And
Thank you for being on.
I will always cherish our days on the campaign trail. And yeah, it was. I was with the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, and I worked on the international union level, the U.S. and Canada, especially on cannabis, which I drugged the union into.
Yeah,
uh,
it did. And that made a huge difference.
yeah. I think we were a good pivot. Today, I'm working with a company called Labor Management Resources (LRM) Incorporated. We're here in Northern California, headquartered in Santa Rosa. I run our Fort Bragg Mendocino office, and as you can see, I'm sitting in my office here right now, which is out here on the porch of in the lovely village of Mendocino.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It looks,
Oh, I love
we're part of the same bio region. It's all from Ecotopia. Has been up in the past. But so what with labor management
it.
resources, that pretty much says that you help labor work. Or so is that like a temporary agency, or exactly what does it do?
So what we do is human resources, um, staffing, payroll, training, certifications. We do collective bargaining negotiations on behalf of our employers with the unions. We're very labor oriented. We're very union oriented. We do represent companies that aren't union yet. Um, as many people know, along with others, drafted what became the first and only education certified cannabis and hemp industries apprenticeship program. And so we work closely with the board of the apprenticeship program, which is just trying to get revived again here now after 2 years of COVID. Um, we do headhunting for companies in a way so that we find the right people for the right company, and those fits usually result in the increase of the value of the company. We help companies with mergers and acquisitions. We help them find funding, investments, partnerships. We help companies develop their financial posture. We prepare their EBITDA formulas, packages for sale and valuation. Um, we also do live event productions, and LRM is actually a decades old live event productions company, and we all got together 35 years ago, working on my political party events, my Democratic Party events, and union conferences and nonprofit conferences and fundraisers, and they did all my live events and all of our live events, and so we've been together for decades,
Great.
and it's a great company. We work closely with IATSE, which is a stagehands union, and we love to do events, everything from the Super Bowl to the PGA tours to we did Hemp Fest, not Hemp Fest, but Emerald Cup this year,
Really?
uh,
Right.
the Harvest Ball. Yeah, we work closely with Tim and his crew, and we're all over the place, and we're having a great time.
Mhm.
I love it.
All right. Well, it sounds like you got a dream job there. Congratulations.
It's a dream job, and it's like working with a family.
Great. And so if somebody wants to reach out to LRM, is it like lrmteam.org?
That's it. Our website is lrmteam.org, and our phone number in Santa Rosa is 707 303 7575. And of course, people can call me anytime they want. Most people have my cell phone number that know me. Uh,
And you're the executive vice president of
I am. I am.
LRM.
I'm
team?
Executive Vice President, and I run everything from sales to mergers and acquisitions to what has become our Cannaforce side. And Cannaforce is spelled with a 4. So
Oh,
it's Canna 4ORCE.
that's catchy.
You like that?
Yeah.
And so the digital footprint on Cannaforce is just being put together. Um, and I'm not sure if the website's up and running yet or not, but we're
So do you like supply teams of trimmers or harvesters or
you name it. We
any of them?
provide
I know there's
labor.
always a strong demand for that temporary work in all farm industries.
We also place we place everybody from the labor side to the artisan, to the technicians, to the certified journeyman when possible,
Uh-huh.
journey persons. We help companies staff from the floor to the ceiling, and the front door to the loading dock. And we also have clients that do everything from point of sale, the entire supply chain. We staff companies, we headhunt for you, we do your payroll, your accounting. And so this way, companies don't have to have a human resources department of their own.
And you've got a 20 plus, how long has LRM been in existence?
Oh, decades, decades,
More than 20 years.
more than 20 years, about 35 years. There's been a couple of name changes over the decades. Concepts, we started off as Concepts and then later became LRM. And we've been around forever, even though I'm the oldest one, and I'm what, 28 or 29 now?
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
61. I've been doing this show since I was 35. And so, is that right? Yeah, that's right. So,
So,
it's been a while, but we worked together back on the initiative I first heard about you working with the initiative in California in 2010. So,
Prop 9,
yeah, but let's go back a little bit further than that. We'll work our way up chronologically. How did you first become involved with marijuana itself? Did you like use it as a youngster like I did, or were you an adult, or how did you become a cannabis guy?
yes, I did inhale.
Uh, I was never in the closet myself.
I grew up in Oakland, uh, Paul, a pretty rough neighborhood, and we were right on the border of Berkeley. So I grew up smoking weed and dropping LSD,
In the 60s,
and in the 60s and 70s. I was born in 1960, and by 1970, if you could smoke it, rub it in your belly button,
right?
or
We're the same age.
smoke, right? Yeah. Yeah. Although you're a lot better looking than I am, I don't know how
I,
that happened.
you can't lie about that.
So yeah, I partied as a kid, and then I got sober. I'm actually a recovering alcoholic, recovering addict.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but I got clean and sober back in the 90s.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And but I was also a cannabis patient in those days. I'm still
So you're in the
I'm,
Oakland area. Did you know Todd Micarea very well?
I remember Todd's name.
Just remember him. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I've worked with him going back. In fact, I met him when I was 18 in Washington, D.C. at a Yippee smoke-in at the White House in
Uh,
1978. He was wearing a tri-corner hat when I met him.
yeah, the guys I was such I was a very small I wasn't small. I was a kid, but I was always a kid that looked and acted older. And I mean, I remember Ken Kesey, the Merry Pranksters, Stan Owsley. I remember Dr. Leary. I had personal experiences with those
I
folks.
got to spend some time with Dr. Leary in his house in Beverly Hills, and then I went to his last birthday party as well. And of course, Ken Kesey put on some benefits for our marijuana initiative back in 1986. So I
Right.
got to meet him then. And
Yeah, I got to see all
Mountain
those.
Girl who ran, was married to Garcia, Jerry Garcia, but he also married to Ken Kesey for a while.
Yeah, Mountain Girl and Tom Wolfe and Geraldine. You remember Geraldine? I can't remember her last name. The Grateful Dead gal. Um, yeah, I got to see all those guys in People's Park and out there in the Sather Gate at the university. When I was a kid, we'd ride our bicycles out and see all those folks. So, yeah, I grew up in that culture.
But you became a union organizer. And so how did you get drawn into working with the unions?
Well, I grew up in a union family, and I grew up on a compound of houses where both families lived near each other. We lived on the Rush compound. Grandpa, I'm sorry, my dad, all my uncles were all Teamsters. My dad's father was a machinist. All officers or really highly involved in the union. On my mother's side, they were all Teamsters, very involved in the union. And so I told where every day at the dinner table, the primary topic of discussion back in the 60s in Oakland was very common was what did we do with the union today? And very strong, Irish Catholic, working class, family background that I grew up at that kitchen table talk, being encouraged to participate in and embrace our unions. And when I became a teenager and got old enough to join the Teamsters, I began loading trucks. I think I was 2 years early. I was supposed to be 18. I got in at 16. My dad was the recording secretary of the local, so I got in a little early. And then I got in a lot of trouble in a picket line, 1978, in a grocery strike. And
That was UFCW.
well, then I was a Teamster,
Okay.
so I actually ended up going to jail for a long time. And when I got out of jail, I couldn't be a Teamster anymore. But the strike that had gotten in trouble in was a grocery strike. So I got to know the meat cutters and the UFCW, what became UFCW later on. I got to know those folks real well. When I got out of jail, it was an ugly thing. A security guard had murdered a picketer, a brother of ours, a young guy. I was 18, he was 19.
That's young.
A off-duty cop security guard ran him down in the driveway, killed him. So something happened to that cop. I ended up going to jail for it.
Uh-huh.
And when I got out,
How long were you locked up?
about a year.
Okay.
But I got 3 years, but there was a gubernatorial commutation that got me out early.
Great.
And so when I came home, it was people admired the fact that our guys, we had stood up for the union. I went to jail. I didn't create other problems. I didn't cooperate with the government. The government was really after the Teamsters at the time,
Uh-huh.
and
What year was that?
so
That must have been like the late 70s.
1978, 79.
Okay.
Uh, so when I came home, it was just a natural fit that I came home embraced by the union and decided that that's where my career and my life would take me, and it did.
Uh-huh.
And I love
And
it.
then,
And
so you worked with the UFCW. Here in Oregon, they represent the grocery stores, like the Kroger, Fred Meyer place, and all the grocery stores and other,
Safeways.
yeah, other service industries primarily, and retail workers.
So UFCW is a retail, agriculture, food processing, textiles, and alternative fuels industries union. As a result of a merger of the meat cutters and the retail clerks and the textile workers and then the oil, atomic, and chemical workers later on
You
are the
started
basic.
with them in the early 90s.
Right, right,
Okay.
and that's the basic foundation of UFCW. And that's actually the alarm that went off in my head, the bell that went off in my head when I realized that cannabis was retail, agriculture, hemp uh, as food processing and textiles,
When
and
did you
hemp as
realize that?
alternative
I
fuel.
know I first heard about you in 2010, working with the Richard Lee's initiative,
Right,
Prop 2, what's
Prop 19.
Prop 19. Well, it's an odd coincidence that the vote in 1972 to legalize marijuana in California, they got like 34% of the vote in 1972 was Prop 19. And just out of the blue, that number came out, well, in sequential order, it came up again for that, what was actually the the third vote in the United States history to legalize marijuana, Prop 19 in 2010. And they lost with what, about 44% of the vote, I think.
No. We in the ballot industry, if you come in over 48%, it's a win. You just lose that ballot. So we came in at 48.6%. We lost by 1.3%.
I see.
And so I've always worked in the political side of the union. And when you come in with numbers like 48.6, that's a win on the topic. You just lost that particular ballot, and it's time to go back and redo your ballot. So, and that's what happened when we lost in California, Prop 19, which is where I got involved. Richard Lee, Dale Jones, the Oaksterdam crew, Jeff Jones, Chris and Nikki, those are the folks that I initially got involved with. And back then we called it the Control, Tax, and Regulate Cannabis Initiative, which later became Prop 19. And as soon as we finished that ballot, we immediately went to Colorado, and we formed the Coalition for Cannabis Policy Reform, CCPR. And so we took CCPR national, but immediately we went to Colorado and started working on Regulate Like Wine, the SAFER initiative.
Working with Mason Tvert and what was
Brian Vicente, Mason Tvert.
Initiative 64.
Amendment 64.
Okay, Amendment 64, yeah.
And like the coincidence of California being Prop 64 and
right.
Colorado. So we immediately went to work there. And
the Marijuana Policy Project pumped about $3.5 million into Colorado in the 2012 campaign, where the Policy Alliance pumped about $6.5 million into the Washington campaign. And I put the marijuana legalization ballot on the ballot in Oregon with about $800,000 of my clinic money.
Well, not only did you do it that time, but how many times before that? You had run that initiative for 6 or 8 times.
Yeah, I ran it 3 times. We got about 60% of the signatures we needed 3 different times in the 90s. And then I didn't do it again until 2008. But I had worked with Jack Hare, John Sajo, Fred Orther, Greg Mahalik here in Oregon, and we had put a marijuana legalization initiative on the ballot in 1985, which was the second time there was a vote on legalizing marijuana after the 1972 Prop 19 there in California, which Michael Aldridge and Todd McArea and Jack Hare had worked on.
And Jack Herrera, yeah. Well, that's immediately, see, I first became familiar with you during Prop 19. You were always topic, and I've always considered you to be the Benjamin Franklin of cannabis legalization, Paul. I mean, I had been hearing about you. I was fortunate enough to meet Jack Herrera just before he passed, and he was very concerned. He said, if you're going to bring that union stuff in here, I want you to guarantee that you guys are going to do what you can do to make it right. And I did. I made him that promise. And in that circle of names and quotes and people and places, your name popped up a lot. And so immediately when we went to Colorado and Washington State, Initiative 502 and Amendment 64.
We had offices in those states helping medical marijuana patients going back in Washington to 2001 and in Colorado starting in 2005. From 2005 till 2008, our clinics were the only statewide marijuana offices in Colorado or Washington.
And that's why I immediately went to Oregon to find you when as soon as we got Colorado and Washington State kicked off. Allison Holcomb had Washington, and so you were in.
Holcomb was an attorney with the ACLU.
ACLU, yeah.
Represented me in a case where we quashed a subpoena for medical records in 2007. So Allison Holcomb, it was originally the other guy, Graham
Boyd.
Yeah, Graham Boyd from the ACLU at the time. And then he brought Allison Holcomb into it. And it was the state of Oregon They subpoenaed records from the state of Oregon's medical marijuana program and from our clinic. I got a subpoena saying you can't talk about this subpoena with anyone. So of course, the next day I had a press conference talking about the subpoena. That's when Graham Boyd contacted me.
Yeah, and I met Graham when he was with Peter Lewis.
Yeah,
And
it was after he left the ACLU.
ended up working with Graham in California, Colorado, Washington State, and then we went to Oregon to find you. And at that point, I think that was 2010. You were still running your original initiative, which we climbed in and tried to help.
Yeah.
But Oregon just wasn't ready to move at the time. We did circle back with what, Measure 91 or Measure 93?
We, put our initiative on the ballot in 2012, and it was 80. Ballot
80, that's right.
That's the one. We did get a vote on it, and we got about 47.5% of the vote. At the same time, they won in Washington and in Colorado with about 54%.
One of my favorite pictures, Paul, is hanging on my desk right now, or over my desk, is a picture of you and I holding a Measure 80
Yes.
post
Yeah.
at Hempstock, standing behind the stage. You and I, we were looking.
I remember.
Yeah.
I can picture it.
I'm going to send you that picture, and I want you to sign it.
Okay.
And then send it back to me, because it's been sitting over my desk for some years now.
All right. Well, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, how did you get involved with? Tell us more about the campaigns then in 2010 and 2012.
Well, I'll tell you how I got the bug. It's Thanksgiving of 2009. I'm sitting at home. Every year, I've always worked on statewide campaigns and national campaigns in UFCWs for 30 some years. So every November, political hacks in California, we used to go to the library. Now we go online and go to the Secretary of State's office listing of filed propositions and initiatives. And so that year, Thanksgiving, I'm sitting at home going online, looking for initiatives for my part of the union to endorse or to oppose. That's what we do in the political department. And that particular year, I hadn't smoked a joint in 10 years, been clean and sober, running up and down the West Coast for my local at the time, Local 5. And I was frustrated because I have to read all these initiatives. I have to do a summary on them and give them to the executive board about what we're going to support, or my recommendation is support or oppose. And I'm frustrated because there's 5 initiatives on marijuana filed with the Secretary of State in 2009. And I'm pulling my hair out because I got to read all these things, right?
Right.
And I'm thinking these damn hippies are relentless, right? And I got to read all these things. So I'm going through them along with other initiatives on, public safety and health and, transportation and infrastructure, blah, blah. And I come across an address that I know very well. It's the old retail clerk's office in Oakland, or across the street from it. And I know it because my grandma was on the e-board of the retail clerks back in the 50s and 60s. And so I look at it, and it turns out to be what is Prop 19.
So it was Richard's group in Oaksterdam, as they became known there.
Right. It was Richard and Oaksterdam's initiative. The address is what caught my attention. So as I look at that address, and I remember my memories of going down there with my grandma, downtown Oakland, I also remember, at the time, there was this horrible epidemic in downtown Oakland where just, the place became Skid Row. And but I suddenly remembered that I had been watching an economic revitalization downtown. Glass going in windows, power going back on in buildings, people bustling around, because I live in Oakland. I drive around, it's a mile from my house. And I suddenly realized that this economic revitalization I've been witnessing for a few years now, had to do with cannabis industry happening.
Marijuana was driving the economic boom.
But I didn't realize that as I witnessed it. I just saw this stuff happening, coming and going every day from work, and And so it suddenly dawned on me, oh, that economic revitalization is this cannabis Amsterdam stuff, which we saw about and heard, but I didn't really pay attention to at the time until this thing went off in my head, and I'm thinking, wow. Well, what this did was it told me that there was an economic revitalization that happens with cannabis, um, and especially with policy licensing, um, creating businesses.
Yeah,
Because I just never had thought about cannabis beyond the kid on the corner that was selling weed to all the other kids, or the
yeah,
gangsters in the crack houses that were selling it to the dopers. Well,
right.
boom, this thing goes off in my head like there's an industry. And then boom, I realize it's retail, agriculture, right? Food processing with edibles and infusions and
It's
textiles with
right
hemp.
into the United Food and Commercial Workers purview of job creation.
And I see our future, right? So, and I also see a economic revitalization for
I mean,
community.
helping
Uh-huh.
Richard Lee in 2010 and working with Prop 19 on a statewide level, but soon you became involved on a national level with the national office in Washington, D.C. of the United
Internet,
Food and Commercial Workers Union. You were the head of their cannabis division or something like that, right?
the international. And what happened was, as I began doing the work in Local 5, locally in California, and we're actually in California and Arizona. So as I began doing work in Oakland and getting involved in that, the international said, "Hey, we see your vision. Come put together a campaign." And so I went to Washington D.C. They sent for me, and we created a national campaign to organize cannabis and hemp workers.
What year was
And
oh,
that was 2011.
okay.
And so we called the campaign the North American Cannabis and Hemp Division. But it wasn't really a division in the union, it was just a campaign. And so the International asked me to come out and design a campaign. So we created the North American Cannabis and Hemp campaign so that we could work in the US and Canada. And that's how we went national. And at one point we were, well, I mean, we had put resources and attention and time in about 26 states by the time I was indicted.
Now, you just
Um,
mentioned being indicted for the first time, and we want to go into that story. I know you've got a book out now. What is that book?
well, the book isn't out yet.
Okay.
The book is being edited now, and so it's kind of a complicated process because I'm 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 not writing a tell-all book where I'm not some federal informant who has immunity for prosecution
Huh?
and is gonna destroy everybody in my life with
We wouldn't have
I'm,
you
what
if
I'm
we were going to do that.
right. What I'm doing is I'm telling the story how it happened, but I'm editing it in a way so that good people who did good things will be highlighted, and but not in a way. I mean, we were legalizing marijuana for the first time. It never happened. Rules got broken.
And a lot of
Some
people
crimes.
were watching us under a microscope. And, when I say watching, I mean, you know, illegally listening into phone calls, as long as they don't use that in your indictment, they can do that. And tons of, confidential informants are sent to try to, to line us up, to put us in jail. I had to deal with
They
that. Go ahead.
they had 5 paid full-time and professional informants on me for some time, and then they couldn't get anything on me because I wasn't really doing anything. So what they did was they arrested my lawyer and they put him in this federal witness program. And so he wore wires on me. He let him in my hotel rooms. He placed him in my meetings. He taped everything.
Can you say his name?
Yeah, Mark Turbeek.
Okay. Okay.
And
What's that?
it's documented. He the feds told him that they would use him as a rat on me, pay him and take care of him, and then he would be okay later on. Well, the California Supreme Court eventually case, and in a decision that's dozens of pages long, said that not only could he not do the scoundrelous stuff that he did and get away with it by being a federal informant, that he was barred from being a lawyer forever on the face of the earth. Contrary to what the feds told him, the feds said, you can come to work for us, be our rat, we'll take care of you, and we'll make sure you're okay at the end, we'll make you some kind of hero. They portrayed him as a victim. They made me out to be some cartoon character, you know. Imagine all the things that the feds like to say about union guys and people who step outside of the norm. They just turned me into this total sociopathic cartoon character, mean guy and they made him out to be this poor little victim who was, manipulated by this bad guy. I'm an easy guy to demonize.
That was the story. You were abusing him or using him or something.
Yeah, he was scared, and he's a grown man. He's a lawyer, right? And most of the crimes that they indicted me for, not that they convicted me, I pled guilty to a few things, and I probably broke a
Guilty
few.
too. I mean, what did you plead guilty to?
At the end of the day, it's like a labor racketeering uh, plea. It's a violation of the Taft-Hartley Act.
Uh-huh.
And there was a money laundering conspiracy, and I pled
Nice.
guilty to those to end the war.
And other people were being threatened. So you and that's pretty normal. They threatened some of your
When
innocent office workers and things like that. They were going to indict them. So
for 3 years, they wanted me to go to work for them. They had a whole laundry list. I worked in politics, so they had a laundry list of political people and union people that they wanted me to set up and do the same things to them that
I marked
they,
your get done.
right. And so I refused. I wouldn't work for them. I'm not that guy,
Yeah.
just not that guy. So then they started subpoenaing all the people that were around me, some people that worked for me, totally innocent people that didn't deserve that kind of scrutiny and or that kind of hassle. You get a federal subpoena, that can cost you $100,000 in attorney's fees
Yeah, I know.
because they don't want you to come say what happened. What they want you to do is they give you a script and they say, okay, we subpoenaed you. Now you come read this script or we're going to indict you, which is essentially the process that they use. So to settle that whole war and to get them off my back about going to work for them, because I'm not a rat, I'm never going to be a rat. I'm not going to work for the government, period. They should have known it. They know it now. To settle that war, to get them off of the people that they were hard timing because of me, um, I made my guilty pleas, and yes, I committed a couple of crimes. I got to tell you, I did what it took to get our campaigns to the places that they needed to get. And there were some things that just, you know, it's just hard to deal with cash money. It's hard to deal with putting cash in campaigns.
And
It's
you
hard
can't
to deal with.
banks. Even now, I have literally had my bank accounts closed 50 different times. One time, they closed 26 accounts at once. My several personal accounts and credit card accounts, my initiative accounts, my business accounts. With Wells Fargo, once they closed 26 banks, but it's literally 20 different times. And out of those 20 different times I've had my bank accounts closed, 18 times, they would not say why. They said, when you sign your account agreement, when you open the account, we don't have to have a reason to close your account. Only twice out of those 20 times did they say it was because of marijuana. 18 times they said they couldn't tell me why.
Well, the things I actually ended up pleading guilty on had to do with um, investments that my lawyer had gotten me involved in with a redevelopment deal on a property I had in Oakland, and stuff that he's my lawyer. He's telling me what to do. I'm doing what he tells me what to do, but it turns out that all of this stuff is
You're being set up like a bowling pin.
pretty much,
Yeah.
pretty much. But Paul, I also got to tell you, I'm no angel. I mean, I'm no, I essentially I didn't pick up the phone and turn him in for money laundering in something he was doing in a business deal I was in. So that was my conspiracy for money laundering. And
So you did 3 years in federal prison there in the California area, right?
correct, yeah, in Terminal Island Federal Prison in San Pedro, I was there for 3 years.
So you went in, what year was it?
2018,
And so you got out in 21,
the end of 2020.
the end of
So
2020. Okay.
yeah, I was there for 34 months,
Yeah.
34 out of 36. And I got to tell you, it was a horrible ordeal. But you know, the way I was raised and where I'm from, Paul, you deal with your own dirt.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to tell you, I sit here today and do this interview with you with a clean heart and a clear conscience of the fact that I've accepted responsibility for the things I've done. I will continue to live that way. That's how a man lives. That's how I was raised. And I didn't drag anybody else into my garbage. And I wouldn't let anybody else get drug into my garbage. I dealt with the things I had to deal with. And that's what a man does. And I look in the mirror and I like the guy that I see in the mirror.
Well,
And
I like you too, Dan, and I appreciate that. Glad we got you on the show here. Let's talk about your book. What is your new book that's coming out soon called?
Rush to Judgment.
Right, and
And
your last name is Rush, so
Rush
it's a nice little pun there. A
is a
Rush to
nice,
Judgment. So,
yeah,
and we have video about that book that we're going to run. So, is there
absolutely.
anything you want to say to introduce that video?
Sure. So this video was made by my film producers, and I've recently sold the rights to my life story to a company called Lime Pit Productions in Southern California. A bunch of great guys. They're really well known for their work with the Boondock Saints and Troy Duffy, and they've done some other stuff on the Grateful Dead. And
So they're
uh,
going to dramatize your life story into a mini series. Is that right?
correct, yeah.
I wonder who will play you. That'll be.
I hope it's Brad Pitt. No, actually, I would love to have Jeff. Who's the dude? Jeff Bridges.
Oh
I love
yeah,
Jeff
yep,
Bridges.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But I don't know. I mean, we're not that far along, and COVID put us back over a year in the production process. We're just, you know, finally getting to, you know, get things back and heading in the right direction. Hopefully, we'll be working on that by this summer. The
Let's
book is
go
going to.
ahead and introduce the video now. And here's a video about Dan's book, Rush to Judgment. We'll be right back.
I'm Dan Rush, and I'm the reason why you're getting high tonight and not going to jail. I helped create the first mainstream political and economic coalition that brought cannabis from the garages and back rooms and into storefronts and licensing. And tomorrow I walk into Terminal Island Federal Correctional Institution and become a resident. In November of 2009, I founded the Medical Cannabis and Hemp Division of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 5 in California. I was promoted by UFCW International Union and moved to Washington, D.C. to found and direct a new North American Cannabis and Hemp Division. Now as National Director, I immediately went to work in Colorado, Washington State, Oregon, and Nevada on marijuana legalization. Being the darlings of the media, we passed legalization state by state over the next few years. Daily, we won support from governors and lawmakers. In a political upset in Nevada, we pushed through new cannabis legislation that created the Las Vegas dispensaries, now the largest in the world. Testifying before Congress, state legislatures, and regulatory agencies daily,
I design programs to unionize and legitimize workers in the cannabis industry state by state. I led the industry on a 5-year campaign around the nation. You know, most people when they're heading to prison, they've done something wrong. Like I said, I committed a crime, but I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm going to prison for something that I'm really proud of. I mean, I got to tell you, it was no easy task. In the beginning, there were literally 3 elected officials in the United States that would talk to us about cannabis, medical legalization. And the day that I was indicted, there's 3 elected officials in the country that won't talk to us about it. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of citizen supporters were caravanning with us as we crisscrossed the U.S. But also traveling with us was a shadow world of undercover FBI, DEA, and federal marshals bugging my rent-a-cars, bugging my restaurants, hotel rooms, and event spaces with microphones and video surveillance. This was all courtesy of a U.S. attorney named Melinda Haig. She painted herself as a crusader bent on protecting the public, but her real motivation was to protect the profits of her friends in the pharmaceutical industry, which would have certainly taken a hit if medical marijuana were legalized. Their message, reefer madness. Their strategy, stop Dan Rush by any means necessary. The funny part of it was the government had to make up this whole story about I was some 24-hour-a-day sociopath who had been lining my pockets. And so they created this 7-year fabrication that was just obnoxious. On August 11, 2015, 11 days before my retirement, I was indicted on 19 counts of accepting bribes, extortion, money laundering, accepting illegal payments, and racketeering. For a year, my lawyer had been working against me by fabricating and taping our conversations as an FBI informant. He had gotten himself into trouble and they flipped him using Patriot Act laws to break our attorney-client privilege. In June of 2017, to end this personal war with the government, my family on the verge of destruction and financially depleted, I pled guilty to money laundering and accepting illegal payments and using my email to further a federal crime.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through. That I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever paid.
Okay, Dan, so we're back, and tell us a little bit more about this video clip we just watched.
So, yeah, this clip is kind of basically starts to tell the story of the book is designed to tell the true story in an edited fashion, if that makes any sense. Editing to not make good people suffer for being involved in things that you know could have been can be misconstrued. So the book is going to be about the making of the film, about the parts of my life that go into the film, and is also going to tell folks that I'm home now and I'm happy. And it's not a tragic story. It was just it was part of the journey, going to prison, going through what I went through, and how I and my family are glad that I'm home, and I'm going to continue my work with creating a dignified, sincere, certified, training-driven industry where people have careers and they can work in a career, be artisans, enjoy what they do, and that our industry is a serious industry. It's not some partier's paradise, but it's a place where people come and they do their art, they do their craft, they live healthy lives, and we carry on.
So that's
And
LRM Incorporated?
LRM Team.
LRMteam.org is the website.
Correct. Right.
And
Labor Resource Management Incorporated, and I run the Cannabis division.
right. Well, that's great. So life's going well now, and you're in sunny Northern California and Ecotopia here with us.
That's Ecotopia, and I live in the village of Mendocino, and we call ourselves Mendonusians.
All right. You're
And
doing business in Oregon though too, right?
nationally, Paul, we have offices in Oklahoma, California, Las Vegas, and we're also working in other states besides that.
All right. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Dan. We'll have to do this again sometime. Maybe when your book comes out or the mini series starts or something. We'll have you back
absolutely.
on. But we'll keep in
Thank
touch
you.
for sure now that we're back in touch.
I love you, buddy. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for coming on. So we've had Dan
Yeah.
Rush with LRMteam.org. Reach out to him if you need labor resource management. Well, thank you, Dan. Remember, keep
Thank
working
you.
to restore hemp. Good night.
Hemp's on the stove. We're cooking it now.